Another guest on TheInformer. We're reaching out to a marketing guru and consultant. She consults to some of the leading business names and brands right around the country. Her name is Annalise Warren and she joins us on TheInformer. Hello, Annalise.
Hi, George.
Now,
thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure. I want to discuss some of the strategies that you've been developing and you've been using, and also the advice that you're providing to some of the businesses that you're working with to get through and to get by and to get ahead of this COVID curve that's flattened just about everybody.
It has. It's definitely been more so for some industries than others, but definitely happy to dig in.
Tell me something. Why has it affected some and not others? Is it because some have been proactive or have been bold enough or have been excited enough or have seen an opportunity to maybe hit a reset button and do something they never imagined 2, 3, 4 years ago that they were ready to do?
Yeah, I think it comes to be able to meet your client or customer where they're at. And if you're in travel industry or something like that at the moment, that's really, really hard to do.
Wow.
Whereas other people like construction or people who are easily able to move online have been able to pivot and still meet that need that the customer has, but in a different creative way.
What's been the biggest bit of advice that you've been able to afford them?
I would say that at the start, it was the encouragement to continue to market your business. A lot of people felt the pressure of not to sell, and marketing your business doesn't necessarily mean that you are going for the hard sell, but taking that more long-term approach and continuing to be front of mind and continuing to develop that relationship with your customer has been really, really important.
What do you say to customers and businesses, for example, who have their fixed business costs, things that they can't move at the moment, and yet the business is closed, or it may be opening, or it may be open rather, but trading in a very limited fashion? What do you say to them? Because they need to meet those costs, and that's an enormous challenge. It's like, as we've used it before, it's like this enormous weight hanging above your head, and you don't want the bank to tell you we're going to defer it. You'd rather the bank say, look, we're going to waive it. Yeah. Or we're the government, and we're going to look at work cover, or we're going to look at your payroll tax, and we're going to waive it because we think the impost, which we have contributed, because this is a government stand down. It's not as if your business wasn't functioning. You were told to close it. So I'm just wondering, has some of that advice been in there?
Yeah, it has. And a lot of that is around negotiating those terms, and a lot of clients have been able to do that. Like cafes and things have been able to go 9 months rent free, that sort of thing.
Wow.
But it is really tricky to be able to navigate that. And really my role was around helping them create strategies that allowed them to pivot without moving too far from their core offering, and also doing that in a way that is sustainable. So for example, having cafes moving instead to just takeaway, but also subscription based, saying we're going to provide a meal for your family every single week for the next 8 weeks, for example. And so finding ways where they can meet their customers where they're at in supporting them through this time and being really empathetic, but also keeping that revenue coming in and looking after their business.
I love that idea of subscription, because that's almost like a booking. And booking is money in the bank, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And people are happy because all of a sudden they're home all the time and having to come up with 7 meals a day and feed all of these people, 3 times a day now. And so that things like that have worked really well. But it is really thinking about your customer and how you can diversify what you're doing and continue to meet the need in a way that suits both parties.
Now, have you run into some of your customers who may have been overwhelmed by some of the challenges that they're facing?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, the great thing is that we live now with the technology that we do live with. And once that creativity, once that strategy has been put into place, having that support in implementing that But some totally have pulled back and decided to focus more on the relationship building side and really building relationships with suppliers, building relationships with customers, and building relationships even with other people in their space and doing collaborations rather than, maybe move themselves online, but focused more on that relationship long-term view.
So that's interesting. They've actually had to do the sorts of things that they haven't had the time to do in the past. They've chosen this, I won't say downtime, but this disruption time to actually put some work into those relationships. That's interesting.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And within our agency, we've definitely seen that. We work with a lot of construction-based businesses who now have the time to be able to think about those projects that haven't had the time potentially to think about, like websites, like thinking about what architects they're going to connect with in order to develop those relationships. So
what advice do you have for businesses who are planning to upgrade their website? What are the key messages that they should be taking on board as they're planning and designing this website to meet the next need?
As always with a website, it's your online front door. It is the place where you need to be talking more about your customer than about yourselves, which a lot of people who don't get marketing support get wrong, I find. They're in love with their product and service, and rightly so, because they need to do it every day. But the customer knows where they are and the customer knows where they want to go. They don't necessarily recognize the bridge as the way to get there as being your product or service. So it's about, in your marketing, crafting the language around speaking to your customer where they are now.
That's interesting. So you've actually changed the way that you've crafted the message?
Yeah, I think it's just about, again, meeting that customer where they're at, because they don't necessarily recognize our solution as the solution. It's about showing them we understand where they are and where they want to be, and then that helps establish ourselves as the authority and become the go-to business for that.
Annalise Warren is the marketing guru we're talking to, and she's given us a sense of just how so many businesses out there have had a number of challenges, but some have been smart enough, and can I say brave enough and courageous enough to think a bit differently and pivot.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is really overwhelming when you've done, especially if you've been predominantly brick and mortar, to be able to jump into this world of online when it wasn't planned. It was definitely, quickly thrust upon us, and having to, some people have likened it to the Monopoly board being thrown out the window, and then you have to all of a sudden pick it up and you've got all the pieces, but you need to decide how you're going to put those things back together. And yes, that process, when it's your livelihood, when it's what you've done, when it's what you're great at, can be really overwhelming. And so just I think the advice would be to get support in that, and to be creative and bring it back to why you're running your business in the first place, which is to support a certain client with a certain need. And in a lot of instances, that need hasn't gone away. That need is still there. It's just about pivoting and being creative and potentially diversifying to how you meet that need now.
Yeah, I love that. There was one well publicised pivot. We saw a gin company headed by Shane Warne, and that gin company decided, okay, we'll save our quality gin, which is world class, and what we'll do is people need hand sanitizer, and we can make it in bucket loads. And they went from the eloquence and the quality gin presentation to making some of the best high alcohol content hand sanitizer on the planet. What did you make of that? Isn't that great?
That's a big pivot. Normally what you're doing is not such a large swing, but hey, you've got to do what you got to do.
Fantastic. So what's next for Annalise Warren?
What's next is just continuing to support as things change and evolve. We're still kind of in it here, and so continuing to be able to look at the trends and continue to support people in being creative and coming up with strategies that can continue to work for their business and for their customer.
If there is someone out there and they've watched and they've enjoyed the engagement, and they want to contact Annalise Warren, how do they go about it?
AnnaliseWarren.com, or come and chat to me on LinkedIn. I'd love to chat.
Annalise, thank you very much for joining us on The Informer. We wish you continued success, and as they say, keep pivoting.
Thank you so much, George.
All the best, Annalise. Thank you.